Successful CEO pays teacher to change his son's grades. Her response surprised the whole school. In a world where parents are willing to cross any line for their children, a shocking tale emerged from the hallowed halls of Ridgewood High School. The whispers began when the affluent CEO, Mark Reynolds, known for his icy demeanor and ruthless business strategies, approached Miss Thompson, the most respected teacher on campus. His son, Ethan, was struggling in algebra, a class critical for his dreams of attending the prestigious Ivy League university that had long been a family legacy. But instead of offering the usual support, Mark proposed something far more insidious: changing Ethan's grades. The news hit the school like wildfire. Miss Thompson, a single mother with bills that seemed to multiply like rabbits, sat in her modest classroom, surrounded by colorful student projects and the faint smell of chalk dust. She was everything Ridgewood valued: integrity, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to ethics. When Mark slid a crisp envelope across her desk, laced with the weight of behind-the-scenes money, her heart raced. Could this really be happening? "Just make a small adjustment," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "and I'll make it worth your while. Think of what that extra cash could do for you and your daughter." The room grew colder, the sunlight streaming in through the window suddenly less inviting. Miss Thompson felt the knot in her stomach tighten. She envisioned her daughter, Sarah, her bright future overshadowed by financial strain. But cheating, corruption, it would shatter everything she had worked for. "No," she whispered, her voice steady, even as tremors raced through her hands. "I won't do it." Mark bristled, his temper flaring like a well-tended flame. "You'd be a fool not to consider it," he shot back, his gaze piercing. "Think about your daughter's future. Isn't that what matters most?" All the students buzzed about the day's assembly, the tension palpable. Whispers of scandal floated through the hallways, students huddled in corners, eyes wide with intrigue. "Did you hear? The CEO is trying to bribe Miss Thompson. She can't possibly go through with it, right?" Conversations turned from calculus to ethics, the very fabric of their education hanging precariously in the balance. As the days passed, Miss Thompson wrestled with her conscience. The siege of guilt threatened to drown her. She could remain silent, keep her job, and quietly accept her financial burdens. But what kind of message would that send to her students? With resolve swelling within her, she made a choice. The following week, at the faculty meeting, she stood up. Heart racing, palms sweaty, she laid bare the entire sordid proposal. Anguish surged around her like a tidal wave. How had they let it get this far? Colleagues exchanged shocked glances. Some murmured disbelief. But as she spoke, she saw hope flickering in the eyes of her students. Dare they believe in integrity? In honor? The room echoed with silence, but within it, the seeds of rebellion sprouted. Were they truly ready to confront the rot beneath the polished surface of their school? Or would fear of repercussions silence them once more? Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários. De qual cidade você está assistindo? Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. As Miss Thompson stood in front of her colleagues. The weight of her revelation hung thick in the air. The silence that followed her disclosure felt like a living entity pressing down on everyone in the room. She could feel her heart pounding, each beat echoing her internal struggle. Would they understand? Would they rally behind her? But before anyone could respond, the doors to the meeting room burst open. It was Ethan, his face a mix of desperation and panic. His eyes darted around, landing on Miss Thompson. "You've got to help me. I just heard something terrible." Miss Thompson stepped forward, concern knitting her brows. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "It's my dad. He's been hiding something. Something huge." He looked ready to collapse, his breath short and shaky. Mark Reynolds had always exuded a powerful aura. He wasn't just a dad. He was a titan among men. But now, Ethan's voice broke that illusion. "I saw him with someone from the school board. They were discussing shady deals, manipulating grades, and Ethan hesitated, swallowing hard. They were talking about more than just mine." The room erupted into chaos. Whispers turned into shouts as teachers exchanged shocked glances. "This can't be true," one called out. "Mark is a pillar of the community." But Miss Thompson felt her stomach drop. The threads of corruption that she thought were just an isolated incident now tangled into a web that ensnared even her students. "Ethan, take a breath," Miss Thompson urged. "What did you hear? Please." He steadied himself, anger flashing in his eyes. "He said he's been paying off half the board to get students into colleges. They weren't discussing just grades. They were talking about exploiting connections. Our school's reputation is built on lies." Every word struck like a punch. The faculty, once stunned, now buzzed with fervor, their initial disbelief melting into something more potent: outrage. How would they let it get this far? "Is this the integrity we've built?" one teacher shouted, clenching their fists. "We have to act. We can't stand by." Miss Thompson felt a flicker of hope. This could be the reckoning they desperately needed. But then she noticed Ethan, his expression shifting from anger to fear. "My dad," he whispered. "He can destroy anyone who gets in his way." The tension thickened. The whispers of rebellion mingled with the threat of retaliation. "We're not afraid of him," another teacher declared. But the word afraid hung in the air, heavy and poignant. Then, like a shocking bolt from the blue, the fire alarm screeched through the building. Teachers exchanged panicked looks as an announcement crackled over the intercom, a voice trembling with urgency. "Evacuate the building immediately. There's been a report of a gas leak." The chaos erupted once more. Students and staff surged toward the exits. But Ms. Thompson remained rooted to the spot, her mind racing. Something was wrong. The timing felt too coincidental, too calculated. Mark's influence didn't just stop at bribery. Could he be orchestrating this to cover his tracks? With Ethan's words echoing in her ears, doubts crept in. What lay buried beneath those polished walls? As they scrambled outside, the group huddled together, fear palpable in the air. Just then, Ms. Thompson caught sight of Mark, standing apart from the crowd, his face a mask of calm in the chaos. He met her eyes, a knowing smile creeping across his face, like a wolf watching sheep scatter. The shady deals, the integrity of the school, and now this emergency. Pieces began to click together in a way that terrified her. As the students stared wide-eyed at their teachers, Miss Thompson took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their hopes resting on her shoulders once more. She had to act. But how? And at what cost? Was it all coming crashing down? Or was this just the beginning of something darker? The uncertainty left them trembling as the sirens wailed in the distance. As the sirens blared, Ms. Thompson's heart raced even faster than before. She was supposed to lead her students through this crisis, but the sight of Mark's calm face amidst the chaos sent chills down her spine. Something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, she felt a sharp tug at her arm. It was Ethan, his expression a mixture of urgency and terror. "Miss Thompson, we can't leave," he shouted, eyes wide. "If we get out now, my dad will cover everything up. I'm afraid for you, for everyone." "Ethan, I know this is scary, but we need to follow protocol," she urged, trying to soothe him while scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. But there was a wild look in his eyes, as if he knew something she didn't. "No," he insisted, gripping her wrist tighter. "You don't understand. We need to find the truth, and right now he's getting away with everything." It was as if something had switched in Ethan. The frightened boy was gone, replaced by someone ready to expose the darkness lurking in their midst. "Let's head to the gym. It's safer," she suggested. But he shook his head violently. Then, in a shocking twist, Ethan took a step back, his face hardening with resolve. "I can't let you go with him, Miss Thompson. I'll tell everyone the truth." Before she could process his words, Ethan lunged away and ran toward the exit. In a split second, the shock morphed the crowd's panic into confusion. "What's going on?" whispered a teacher, looking around as if trying to piece everything together. "Ethan, come back!" But he didn't stop. He dashed straight for the nearest fire alarm pole station, and with all his might yanked down on the handle. The deafening sound added to the chaos, but this time it wasn't just the fire alarm. It was an outright declaration of war against the hypocrisy that had seeped into their school. "Ethan, no!" Mark shouted, his calm demeanor shattered, replaced with fierce anger. His eyes darkened, and in a flash, he began pushing his way toward the chaos, threading through the students and teachers, intent on stopping his son. But it wasn't just a father's rage that Ms. Thompson felt. In that moment, the gas leak, the bribery, and now this, something deeper stirred within her. She turned to face Mark, realizing she'd never seen his face twisted in anything but control. But now, it was a raw, agonizing fury as he barreled forward. Suddenly, just as Mark reached out for Ethan, a loud crash echoed from beyond the gym doors. Everyone froze, eyes darting to the source of the commotion. The door burst open, revealing a representative from the school board. But this wasn't just anyone. They recognized her as Miss Whitmore, someone they had thought was long gone. "Mark, stop this!" she shouted, pointing an accusing finger at him. "You think you can keep manipulating this school? You're not untouchable. I have evidence, and I'm not afraid." The room gasped. Just as hope lit Miss Thompson's heart, Mark's face paled, his mask of control cracking, revealing desperation. "You wouldn't dare," he spat, but there was no confidence ringing in his voice. Ethan stood frozen, wide-eyed and trembling. "What do you have, Miss Whitmore?" he whispered, caught between fear and hope. But before she could speak, there was a sudden metallic sound outside. A swarm of police officers appeared, fanning into the school with urgency, their faces set to take charge. "Everyone stay calm. We're here to address a situation." The energy shifted from panic to something else entirely. Mark's expression turned from furious to helpless, and for the first time, Miss Thompson saw fear, real fear, in his eyes. Whatever Ms. Whitmore had was powerful enough to bring consequences crashing down around him. "Is this what you wanted, Miss Thompson?" Mark barked, a broken man now. "To bring it all down around us." The shout echoed through the hall, and Miss Thompson felt the weight of the moment. The ongoing fight for integrity suddenly pivoted, and in one breathtaking instant, everything she thought she knew cracked wide open. This wasn't just about grades. There were lives entangled, secrets that stretched far beyond the walls of Ridgewood. Would they finally confront this monster? Would the truth shatter everything, including their faith in each other? The sirens blared louder, mingling with their racing hearts. In that moment, Miss Thompson knew the fight was just beginning, and she had to decide where her loyalties truly lay. But little did they all know, the greatest betrayal was yet to be revealed, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. As the sirens blared, Miss Thompson's heart pounded faster than ever. She was supposed to lead her students through this crisis, but the sight of Mark's calm face amidst the chaos sent chills down her spine. Something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, she felt a sharp tug at her arm. It was Ethan, his expression a mixture of urgency and terror. "Miss Thompson, we can't leave," he shouted, eyes wide. "If we get out now, my dad will cover everything up. I'm afraid for you, for everyone." "Ethan, I know this is scary, but we need to follow protocol," she urged, trying to soothe him while scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. But there was a wild look in his eyes, as if he knew something she didn't. "No," he insisted, gripping her wrist tighter. "You don't understand. We need to find the truth. And right now he's getting away with everything." It was as if something had switched in Ethan. The frightened boy was gone, replaced by someone ready to expose the darkness lurking in their midst. "Let's head to the gym. It's safer," she suggested, but he shook his head violently. Then, in a shocking twist, Ethan took a step back, his face hardening with resolve. "I can't let you go with him, Miss Thompson. I'll tell everyone the truth." Before she could process his words, Ethan lunged away and ran toward the exit. In a split second, the shock morphed the crowd's panic into confusion. "What's going on?" whispered a teacher, looking around as if trying to piece everything together. "Ethan, come back!" But he didn't stop. He dashed straight for the nearest fire alarm pull station, and with all his might yanked down on the handle. The deafening sound added to the chaos. But this time, it wasn't just the fire alarm. It was an outright declaration of war against the hypocrisy that had seeped into their school. "Ethan, no!" Mark shouted. His calm demeanor shattered, replaced with fierce anger. His eyes darkened, and in a flash, he began pushing his way toward the chaos, threading through the students and teachers, intent on stopping his son. But it wasn't just a father's rage that Miss Thompson felt in that moment. The gas leak, the bribery, and now this, something deeper stirred within her. She turned to face Mark, realizing she'd never seen his face twisted in anything but control. But now it was a raw, agonizing fury as he barreled forward. Suddenly, just as Mark reached out for Ethan, a loud crash echoed from beyond the gym doors. Everyone froze, eyes darting to the source of the commotion. The door burst open, revealing a representative from the school board. But this wasn't just anyone. They recognized her as Miss Whitmore, someone they had thought was long gone. "Mark, stop this!" she shouted, pointing an accusing finger at him. "You think you can keep manipulating this school? You're not untouchable. I have evidence, and I'm not afraid." The room gasped. Just as hope lit Miss Thompson's heart, Mark's face paled. his mask of control cracking, revealing desperation. "You wouldn't dare," he spat. But there was no confidence ringing in his voice. Ethan stood frozen, wide-eyed and trembling. "What do you have, Ms. Whitmore?" he whispered, caught between fear and hope. But before she could speak, there was a sudden, metallic sound outside. A swarm of police officers appeared, fanning into the school with urgency, their faces set to take charge. "Everyone stay calm. We're here to address a situation." The energy shifted from panic to something else entirely. Mark's expression turned from furious to helpless, and for the first time, Miss Thompson saw fear, real fear in his eyes. Whatever Miss Whitmore had was powerful enough to bring consequences crashing down around him. "Is this what you wanted, Miss Thompson?" Mark barked, a broken man now. "To bring it all down around us?" Ethan stepped forward, fueled by newfound courage. "You used us. You think your money can protect you? You're not invincible." Just then, just as the officers closed in, Miss Whitmore pulled out a thick folder, its contents visible to everyone. "This isn't just about grades, Mark. It's about falsified records, shady backroom deals, and manipulated test scores. Your name is on every document." Gasps filled the room like electric shockwaves. But then, a sudden wave of realization washed over Miss Thompson. The truth was far darker than she had imagined. As she looked closely at the folder, she noticed a familiar name signed on one of the documents. Her breath caught in her throat. "No," she whispered, backing away. A progression of dread filled her. Was it really true? The documents weren't just affiliated with Ethan's father. They included her own name, her fate tied to the scandal in ways she never anticipated. The silence stretched across the room as eyes turned toward her, suspicion hanging thick in the air. She felt the weight of 1,000 accusations. The betrayal screamed louder than words. "Miss Thompson?" someone ventured, their voice strained. Suddenly, she felt a tremor ripple through the group. The greatest betrayal was not just Mark's, but a revelation that gutted the very foundation of trust. What had she unknowingly been a part of? How deep did this corruption run? Before she could form a response, Miss Whitmore dropped the bombshell. "And it gets worse. There are other names, other deals." Just like that, the fight for integrity turned into a survival instinct. With those words, everything they believed in teetered on the edge. No longer just a matter of ethics or grades. It was a fight for survival, against something they hadn't prepared for. A betrayal that hit closer to home than any of them could have imagined. As the police readied their questions, Miss Thompson felt the darkness closing in around her, making her question everything she thought she knew. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about all of them, trapped in a web of lies they had never seen coming. What would happen next? And who could they trust? The time for answers was drawing near, and they were all standing at the precipice of a truth yet to unfold. As the weight of Miss Whitmore's revelation hung in the air, an electric tension shot through the room. Eyes darted between Mark and the police, and realization of betrayal gripped them all like a choking vine. But just when the atmosphere seemed to crystallize into palpable fear, ducted air howled through the halls of Ridgewood High School, slicing through the tension like a knife. Mark, cornered at last, began to sweat. Ethan's breath quickened as he stood rigid, caught between fear for his father's rage and relief at the revelation of lies. "You've manipulated us, Dad, all these years." His voice trembled, the copious weight of his fear colliding with newfound defiance. Just then, an unexpected burst from the back of the crowd caught everyone off guard. A loud crash, followed by the crash of a glass window shattering. Turned toward the source, they watched as a masked figure scrambled through the opening, rolling over shards of glass like a dark silhouette in an action movie. Gasps erupted as the figure rose, revealing a familiar face. It was Sarah, Miss Thompson's daughter, eyes wild, chest heaving. "Mom!" she shouted, scrambling toward Miss Thompson, even as chaos pulsed around them. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" Miss Thompson gasped, confusion flooding her. This wasn't the reunion she'd pictured. Sarah's appearance heightened the stakes, scrambling the lines between family and the broader storm of betrayal ahead. "I overheard. I had to come. They're lying, Mom," she gasped, eyes darting toward Mark. "It's not just about grades. It's everything." Ms. Thompson's heart sank. Could the web of deception reach into their own home? She felt a dizzying sense of horror spiral within her. "What do you mean? What do you know?" Suddenly, without warning, Sarah pulled out a small electronic device, a recorder. The realization struck Miss Thompson like a blow. Her daughter had been gathering evidence all along. "I didn't want to believe it, but I heard them talking about you, and more." All eyes turned back to Mark, his face twisting into fury. "Shut up! Do you think you can expose me? You're a child!" His bark echoed around the gym. But Sarah stood firm, her hand shaking only slightly as the recorder whirred ominously. Just then, everything shifted again. A loud thwack, followed by a second impact from outside, sent another tremor through the crowd. It took a moment for everyone to grasp what was happening. The police were moving in quickly, pushing aside students and teachers, weaving through confusion. Then, out of nowhere, Miss Whitmore pulled marked files from her own bag, thrusting them into the face of the lead officer. "You need to see this. It's not just about grades. It's about that whole system. Every one of us is tied into it." The officer's eyes widened as he scanned a cover that bore Mark's name. In that instant, the auditorium erupted into chaos once more. Squealing sirens resonated through the web of voices, and the air became thicker with confusion and fear. "Enough!" Mark bellowed, desperation creeping in. "You're all too naive to know what you're asking for." But the unmistakable sense of unity among the teachers and students held firm. They weren't just scared, they were furious. The walls closing in thought of his power crumbling. As the trap tightened, the police officer looked right at Mark, his hand held up, signaling for him to stop. "We have witnesses, files, evidence. You're under arrest for bribery, corruption, and conspiracy." In shock, Miss Thompson turned to Sarah. "How did you know?" Sarah glanced back, her expression unreadable. "I was offered a deal too, Mom. Your name was on the list." She paused, letting the weight of that statement sink in. "They wanted to silence us both." Miss Thompson staggered back, the weight of betrayal settling in like a heavy cloak. It wasn't just corruption that they were unearthing. It was a depth of connection she had never anticipated. The room shook with new urgency, the once silent threads of darkness bleeding out into the open. As the police closed in on Mark, preparing to place handcuffs on him, Miss Thompson felt something snap beneath her. A flicker of fear mixed with hope. Could they really bring him down? Could she trust her own daughter, skeptical of the ties that bound them? Amid this turmoil, a shadow loomed larger than life, behind Mark. Emerging from the chaos, a figure wrapped in intrigue and danger, peering out with a knowing grin that sent shivers racing down her spine. Looks like the party's just getting started, the figure said, voice dripping with malice. You fools have no idea what you're inviting. With the abruptness of a heavy thunderclap, everything fell silent as eyes turned wide, hope and dread intertwining under the weight of a revelation yet to dawn. Who was this figure, and what did they know that could change everything again? In that instant, Miss Thompson understood that the real game had only just begun. As the weight of Miss Whitmore's revelation hung in the air, an electric tension shot through the room. Eyes darted between Mark and the police, and the realization of betrayal gripped them all like a choking vine. Just when the atmosphere seemed to crystallize into palpable fear, a sudden, loud crash echoed through the hall. Everyone turned, hearts racing, just in time to see the shadowy figure of a person rushing through the shattered window. Glass scattering across the floor like shards of fate. "Get down!" someone shouted. But it was too late. The figure stood tall, pulling back its hood with a swift movement, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through the crowd. It was Ethan's older sister, Lily, someone they all thought had vanished years ago under mysterious circumstances. "What the hell?" Miss Thompson gasped, her heart stopping for a split second. Lily's presence felt like an eruption in a volcano of secrets they all thought they had contained. "Lily, what are you doing here?" Ethan stuttered, disbelief and confusion etched across his face. All eyes were on her, the atmosphere shifting from chaos to a riveting edge of tension, a gravitational pull towards the truth. "I'm not here to explain myself," Lily shouted, a sense of urgency lacing her voice. "It's time for the truth to come out. I recorded everything." She pulled out a small device, hands shaking, but determination blazing in her eyes. "Mom, you have to listen to me," Lily exclaimed, locking her gaze on Miss Thompson. "They were using me, all of us. They made me think I was safe. But guess what? I have proof of everything." Mark's face twisted into fury, but there was something deeper lurking there. Fear. "You have no idea what you're playing with." "Lily!" he barked, desperation creeping into his tone. "You're going to ruin everything." The tension was thick, suffocating. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, every gaze locking onto the girl who had emerged from the shadows, the catalyst for chaos. Lily took a step forward, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "You think I don't know what you did, Mark? You think I'd just forget? I've been watching, waiting for the right time to expose you. You've betrayed everyone." A murmur spread through the crowd, disbelief turning into horror. The police inched closer, eyes darting between Mark and Lily, ready to leap into action. "What do you mean by betrayed?" barked the lead officer, his attention now fully on Lily, sensing the mounting storm. "My sister, my friends, they're all tied up in this mess of corruption," she shouted, voice breaking. "You think it's just grades? It's a whole system. People's lives are at stake." She pointed a shaky finger at Mark. He was the mastermind, orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. Mark staggered back, his eyes flickered with uncertainty, anger, and finally something far worse, panic. He was losing control. The professional facade he wore for years, crumbling like sand beneath his feet. "You don't know what you're saying," he barked, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "You're just a child." Suddenly, from somewhere deep in the recesses of the crowd, a voice called out, steady and firm. "You're not invincible, Mark. You've hurt too many people." It was Miss Whitmore again, stepping forward, her defiance igniting a spark of courage in others. Just as it seemed everything was coalescing into a reckoning, the lights flickered. A strange rumble echoed through the building, a low, ominous sound. The ground beneath felt unstable, like the very foundation of their reality was shifting. Suddenly, the floor began to tremble, causing everyone to lose their footing. "What is happening?" Miss Thompson shouted, panic rising as the tremors grew stronger. Chairs toppled over, and students screamed in confusion, trying to balance themselves amid the chaos. And then, right at that moment, the front wall of the gym crumbled outward, as if struck by an unseen force. Dust and debris cascaded into the room, revealing a tunnel behind the wall, an escape route or a trap. They all stood frozen, breathless, unsure of what it meant. "Run!" someone yelled, but no one moved. They were all paralyzed by the magnitude of it all. Betrayals, long-held secrets, a figure from the past returning with a vengeance, and now a literal ground-shaking threat. As the dust settled and silence took over, all eyes turned back to Lily, waiting for her to explain. "This is just the beginning," she said. Voice steady, compelling attention. "We're all connected to something far, deeper than you could imagine. Every lie, every betrayal leads us right back here." A stillness sank into the air, leaving a haunting question hanging between them that shook their very belief. What else had been hidden in the shadows, and who would survive the unraveling of this web? The truth was out there, lurking like an unseen predator, and it was only a matter of time before it came for them all. As the dust settled, an anxious silence enveloped the gymnasium. Everyone stood, frozen, casting nervous glances at the crumbling wall and the girl who had suddenly reappeared like a ghost from the past. Lily's voice rang out, steady but filled with urgency. "This starts now. It's time to end the lies." Mark's expression morphed from anger to panic. "You're making a huge mistake, Lily. You have no idea what you're dealing with," he shouted, trying to assert control despite the chaos around him. But Lily stood firm, the recorder clutched tightly in her hand. "You think you're untouchable? You think you can keep running this place like a puppet show? Not anymore." The police officers stepped closer, ready to act, eyes flicking between Lily and Mark. Behind them, Ms. Whitmore revealed more evidence, documents spilling out of her hands, pages fluttering down like fallen leaves. "This isn't just about grades. This is about the people you've hurt, Mark. About time someone held you accountable." Ethan watched, heart racing. His sister was bold, fearless, but the fear still simmered just below the surface, threatening to boil over. "Lily, be careful," he warned, though he felt a strange surge of pride. Then it happened. A sudden explosion of sound as the police moved in, ready to detain Mark. "You're under arrest for bribery, corruption, and conspiracy," one of the officers commanded, handcuffs poised. Mark's bravado shattered like glass. "You don't know what you're doing," he yelled, but his voice trembled. "I'll take you all down with me." The officers didn't flinch. They moved in, wrapping cold metal around his wrists despite his protests. Murmurs erupted in the crowd, disbelief mingling with relief. "They're really doing it. They're arresting him." Ms. Thompson felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Relief, guilt, fear. "What have I been a part of?" she thought, her face pale as she thought of the documents that tied her to the corruption. But then Lily stepped forward, determination etched on her features. "Mom, it's not your fault. You've been standing up for us. Together, we can clean this mess." In that moment, something shifted. the fear began to lift, replaced with a flicker of hope. They could overcome this. The truth was out. They had taken the first step towards justice. As Mark was led away, the tension in the room began to dissolve, replaced by an air of camaraderie. Teachers and students looked at one another, a shared understanding forming through the fear. They had weathered a storm, and they could rebuild. "We need to make this right," Miss Thompson said, her voice shaking slightly, but filled with resolve. "We need to ensure this never happens again." Ethan nodded, looking at his sister with admiration. "Yeah, we'll start a student council, something where we can be heard, where we can fight for what's right." Others chimed in, discussions sparking, ideas buzzing like electricity. They were no longer just students and teachers. They were a community, ready to confront the darkness together. As they began to leave the gym, the officers remained to document the scene, ensuring that every detail was recorded, every voice heard. Just as they stepped outside into the daylight, Miss Thompson turned to her daughter and son. "We've got a long way to go, but we'll do this together." Lily smiled, her familiar sparkle returning. "We have each other, and now we have the truth." The crowd began to disperse, students chatting animatedly, teachers sharing resolute looks. It was a new beginning for Ridgewood High, and they all felt it, the hope rising like a phoenix from the ashes of deceit. And then the familiar voice would emerge, cutting through the air sharply. "That's just one chapter of our story, but there's much more to unfold." As they walked into the sunlight, uncertainty still loomed on the horizon. What lay ahead? They had faced darkness, but were now stepping into the light. But one thing was undeniable: never again would they silence the truth. Now, if you've enjoyed this wild ride and want to stick around for more electrifying stories, you need to subscribe right now. Don't miss out on the next chapter that's coming your way. Smash that like button to keep the algorithm happy, and flood the comments with your thoughts and theories, because I want to hear from you. And for real, don't wait another second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who have to know how this ends. Your support means everything. Let's keep this community growing.